Hey guys, today we got my buddy Brandin Pettersen on from Lakeland, Florida, and I'm excited. I've been waiting to talk to this guy for a while now because we have had an opportunity recently to learn a little bit about mobile home parks. And my first answer to the gentleman that passed the deal along to us was, "Man, I don't know anything about mobile home parks at all." Well, then through a chain of connections, here comes this guy named Brandon, and he says, "Man, that's what I do is mobile home parks." So here we are. Brandon's going to share with us how he went from flipping houses, wholesaling real estate, all the stuff. I'll let him share that. To now doing bigger, much better deals in mobile home parks. So, Brandon, how you doing today, brother?
And it is an honor to be on. Thank you very much. Like I said before, I love talking real estate and
Yeah.
specifically mobile home parks. So yeah, dude, let's do it, man. I'm excited.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's start off give an intro of like who you are first and what number one, what's your life like, and take it all the way back. Why real estate and how did it start to begin with?
Um, no one ever asked that, but it's like, I don't even know. I used to work up at DC. I had a buddy this was 2009, 2008. So it was recession time. I
Right.
was young and I had a buddy who got in with the banks and he was doing foreclosures and flipping. And that was that. And I literally packed my stuff up and quit my job. And I loved it up there, but corporate life, at that age, I wanted to do something. So I moved down to Florida, lived with him and we started flipping. And then I got my license. I got hooked up with the foreclosures, Wells Fargo, all those different banks and the servicing companies too that manage like service the actual properties. That's who you go get connected with as time went on.
Right.
And so I started doing foreclosures, managing those for them, property preservation. Meanwhile, flipping all the time because you
Nice.
have this was an influx of properties. You're literally getting flooded with them. And it was a small world down in Florida. So it was like you knew all the other foreclosure agents and no one wanted properties and foreclosures would sit. So you could let a foreclosure sit and offer percentage lower than what it was listed for and get a great deal. You and I
Nice.
were just talking buying homes, 40, 50K, selling them for a buck 20. Those homes are now worth half a million.
Yep.
But yeah, so I did that, and then later on, as wholesaling became more popular, I kind of stopped flipping in 2017ish. I think I started wholesaling.
Nice.
Did that for a while, but ultimately, man, I think what it came down to is how do you say it? It's like when you see all sides of it, right? Because
Mhm.
I not only I worked for the banks, but I worked for the hedge funds too. In 2012, as the bank foreclosures were dying down, I saw like my business slowing. So I transitioned into selling homes to the hedge funds and then
Okay.
doing like not property management, but it's called property placement where you find the tenants. So I was the go-to agent in all of Central Florida for American Residential, who got bought out by American Homes for Rent. And at that point, then my business definitely, because they had all in-house agents. So
Okay.
at that point, I just went into full-time flipping and stuff and wholesaling. And but I guess what I'm saying is it's like you realize it's very transactional. Everything that I just listed is all a transaction.
Yep.
Flipping is a transaction, working for the banks, transaction, hedge funds, transaction, wholesaling. It is you are only as good as your latest deal. And I went through the gambit, man, and it was like I just didn't know what I wanted, but I knew it wasn't that. And tracking back, I had also, probably in like 2013 or 12, I started buying my own single family houses for rent because it was
Okay.
so cheap. So I was buying foreclosures, renting them, buying duplexes and quads and mobile homes. And, I was keeping them and I started selling them off as we got, you know, later into 2019 and 20 and stuff. And it was like, it was a grind, man. I would travel all over the county. I'm doing flips. I have these rentals. And it was just like, for what? Like the people in these houses had such high expectations of what they wanted. You rent a 2,500 square foot house out, like people have expectations. You're
Right.
getting $1,800 a month, $2,000 a month. And it was tough. And it was like, man, this isn't it. Like I'm barely making cash flow. And and what really stuck with me was no matter how hard I worked, didn't matter. It didn't change the value of a house. I could be the best landlord, the best, get the most rent. And no matter what, my houses were still worth the same. My duplexes and quads, that was different. But again, like the scalability wasn't there. And so
Right.
ultimately, man, to fast forward, that's where I found mobile home parks, and
Nice.
why I'm doing that. And I mean, I shut my business down. I went cold turkey. Um, I laid everybody off except for like a couple employees who help us with the mobile home park stuff down, property management. And
Right.
we, what do you call it? you let go of the boats or something, and you just
Burn the boats.
burn the boats. Yeah,
Burn
we
the boats, baby.
burned the boats. We sold all of our properties in early 2020. I think it took a while, but we sold everything in 2020. Wish I would have held on to them a little longer,
A little
knowing what
bit.
happened
Yeah.
and knowing what happened. But and then we started looking for parks, and we ended up closing on our first park in 22.
That's
So
awesome, man.
it took me a while to get our first park and stuff, but we got it, and
So,
that's how.
so as entrepreneurs, something always triggers us, right? What triggered you? Like, where did the idea come? Like, you're flipping, you're wholesaling, you're doing all that. Where did the idea of, hey, Bing, I'm gonna go do mobile homes? Where did that even come from?
So there is no one point, right? But when people ask me that question, I always relate it back to this and this is the earliest thing I can think of. And I had cross paths with parks before. Like I remember I did a foreclosure mobile home park in South Lakeland in 2011, but I wasn't paying attention. The time I paid attention was the time I wholesaled a guy at Park. And he
Okay.
bought it for 100 grand, and it was like 5 units or whatever it was. And he paid like 100 grand for it. And I drove by it months later, and there was like a new double wide sitting on there. And I call him up. I'm like, "Hey, dude, like, what is that? Like, how'd you just put that there?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I bought it for 20 grand." I go, "Wait, what?" He goes, "Yeah, I bought that home for 20 grand. A lady was building a house, she was done with it, and I bought it for 20 grand, moved it there." He's like, "I'm renting it out for like 1,200 bucks." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like,
Really?
"Well, I had, and he's like, I had a vacant lot. You sold me the park. There was vacant lots. So I moved that." And all of this just started going. The numbers, I'm like, wait, he's bought this for 20 grand. He's going to rent it for 1,200. He bought this whole park. He has like these other units that are giving him. And things started to kind of trigger. And then I just started looking. And then through wholesaling, another one came across my desk, and I started kind of chasing them. And the more I was chasing them, the more intrigued I got. I didn't get any of those, the ones I was chasing.
Really?
Definitely did not. I tried hard, but didn't chase any or didn't get any of them. And that was kind of how the triggering point was, that guy buying a mobile home park for 100 grand and then placing stuff on vacant lots. And it's like, wow,
So were they
something.
buying it? Were they buying them like cash, or were they putting lines on them, or like how were they buying them?
The park or the homes he paid cash.
The homes he
I
paid cash.
other people do different things, but I know him personally. He paid cash for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so he paid cash for it as it just had to park some money and invested in a mobile home park.
It's
How
just
do you?
what he does. Yeah, that's his business. He was because in Florida, right? So like we're heavy into mobile homes down here in Florida. Like there's
Okay,
single family houses, but we have a crap ton of mobile homes. So
got it.
wholesaling mobile homes, like he was my go-to mobile home. I wholesale because we would have an acre of land in a mobile home. Who would I call? I call that guy. So when I
Right.
got this little park, who did I call? I called him, and he would buy land and put mobiles on it. He'd move mobiles around. It's like a business thing
That's
down
the
here.
business model. Okay.
We have a lot of mobile homes down here in Florida.
Okay. All right. How does that work when it comes to the now you're keeping them. What was your first one like when you
I
bought
knew
it?
nothing. I knew
I'm
nothing.
that's usually how it works.
Although I had like a year and a half of like education, because again, I wasn't finding anything. I was hoping I was going to get one, my first month or whatever. Someone would say
Right.
yes to me. I didn't get it till about a year and a half to 2 years later. Honestly, you could have sold me anything and I would have bought it. I just wanted in, bro. It was like an addict. I wanted in. I wanted my first park. I got lucky, if I'm
Okay.
being honest.
That's all right.
And, we have some investors with us. And again, I always try to be very clear. I own nothing. I'm just a steward of capital. My
Yep.
investors trust me to steward and manage the properties. And yes, we have equity splits, but honestly, it's just I'm a steward of their properties and their investment. And it's a great blessing to do that. And they
Right.
trusted me because of my experience and all the other things I've done. And, I got lucky. I did no due diligence on the first one other than walking the park and talking to the owner who developed it. And my gut instinct was like, I could do this.
Right.
Um, and we bought it 1.3, 36 lots, making 20K, 19K a month. It was in Little Rock, and that was that. It all came about because I was doing free education for wholesaling, and one of the
Okay.
guys had heard me on one of the teachings or Zooms or whatever, and he reached out to me and he's like, "Hey man, like you're doing this," and I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I have this part. I'm wholesaling it. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Where is it?" He's like, "It's in Little Rock." I'm like, "Never heard of Little Rock in my life."
Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas. Never even.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
yeah, I'm an American, but Arkansas, where is that? What is it? Couldn't
Yeah,
even point it
I'm
out
with
on a
you.
map at that point. I was like, "Yeah, I'll buy it. Send me this stuff." And And, I treated it just like a flip. I treated it like any other property I've done where you look at the numbers, you look at the property, you walk it, you get your gut feeling, talk to the seller, cool, done, right? You don't inspect flips, bro. I
No.
mean, you inspect them, but you don't have plumbers and electricians. I mean, bro, like that's not what we do when you have the experience. Although I had no experience in mobile home parks, I acted like I did because of my other experience. That was not wise.
Right.
There are so many more nuances that I did not know, and I got 100% extremely lucky on this
Okay.
investment. So yes, that's how it all happened.
So when you go in and analyze, and pardon me, I'm ignorant to all this, right? If it's not a single family or a small multi, I don't know anything about it. So when you're walking it, you mentioned the gut feeling, right? We all go with the gut. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. If you're used to looking for these things for a year trying to find them. Like how did you know that the money was safe? How did you know that it was a good deal to buy? Number one, especially if you're in Florida and that was in Arkansas, how'd you know all that?
Um, I didn't. I just knew
Okay.
I could do it.
All right.
It's hard to explain. Like,
Fair.
so I have this thing, like if anyone else could do it, then I could do it. Like
Yeah.
given the same amount of education, given the same amount of time, given the same amount of commitment, if somebody else could do it, then I could do it. I knew people were doing it. I just had to figure out how. I knew when I walked through, so like I've talked about this before, and it's like everyone's got a buy box, right? You do for your
Yeah.
flips, you do for
Yeah.
your rentals. I have a skill box. It's my
Okay.
buy box, but only based on skills. So when I look at a park, I have to know that I can do it. And that's just me
Okay.
being honest. There are certain things I have skill for, and there's some I don't. So when I walked in and I saw mobiles, okay, and they're all like again blessing. They were all 2000s and late 90s, so
Okay.
nice. And they were on septics. Okay, I do septics all the time. You know what
Got
I
it.
mean? Like all these things started like clicking with me, and I'm like, okay, I like the area. This looks good. So all those things, like I can do this. I've managed rentals before. I can
Yeah.
do that. I have built virtual teams from wholesaling and managing flips in different counties. I can do that. So although I never had specific experience in managing a mobile home park 2,000 miles away, I had the skill set from all these other pieces that I've done. I just needed to combine them and then retarget them on my new mission. And I
Got it.
knew that I could do that because I had pivoted so many times since 2009 from, and
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even go through my full bio, bro. I'm not trying to break it down of what I've done in 15 years, but it's
That's all
like
right.
I had pivoted so many times. I was like, this is just another pivot. I just need to rearrange my skills, target them on this, and I can do it. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy and we made a lot of mistakes, but it was a good investment. But again, extremely lucky. Would never do that again. But I don't think I'm the only one who's done that. And now we go through a very detailed due diligence to where we turn parks down. Like I just canceled a contract on one. I really wish I wouldn't have had to. But now that I'm doing due diligence, you find mistakes and you're like, now based on my experience, there's no way I want to run through that again. Like, dude, that
Right.
was a problem on this park. I'm not dealing with that for that price. And so you learn those things as you go.
Got it.
But yeah, I would say my skill set gave me the confidence that I could do it to answer your question.
When you were flipping and doing all the residential stuff, obviously you were probably pretty good at raising capital.
Mhm.
Were those same skills
I
used
was not.
for?
I was not.
Oh, you were not good at raising capital.
No. So dude,
Hey, we're putting it all out there today, Brandon.
no, I think I was really greedy
Okay.
and stupid. So one of the reasons why I like mobile home parks is I think I found a vehicle that I could help other people with. When I
Okay.
was young, it was all about me. I never raised capital. I never even used, I had saved up a significant amount of money.
Okay.
Um, and properties, and again, back then you were buying homes at like 20, 50K. So the
Yep.
amount of money I needed to save is not like today. So I use cash.
Okay.
And then I literally would stack and uh back then it would take you like 3, 4 months, you fix a property, but it would take like 3, 4 months to sell. So I was be doing 1, 2 a year, then 3 a year, then 4. And again, this was 2009. So I kept building my cash reserves up.
Yep.
And so you would have all this cash in the bank that I couldn't touch. I was always broke because I just needed to use my cash to fund the flips. I couldn't spend money, which is why I was also a realtor living
Yep.
off of my commissions and stacking my cash. And then it wasn't until like 2015 I started using hard money.
Okay.
And then there was one point I was partners with a buddy of mine, and he knew someone who wanted to invest, and she had the audacity, bro. This is how ignorant I was. She had the audacity to want to come after giving me 100 and some thousand, the audacity to want to come and see the flip in progress. And I was like, what? I was on the phone with my partner. I was like, she's not coming on the job site. I got crews. She gave us her money. She can wait. Like, what, she doesn't try, just total,
Yeah.
total ignorance and stupidity. But I was so used to doing everything myself, and which is why I wasn't scaling also, because
Right.
I was taking so long to churn my money and get it back and buy more. And even with hard money, like the banks had rules, and I was so upset with the draw schedules, and you were
Yeah.
slowing me down, because when you have cash, you just move.
Just
And so
go.
I
Yeah.
think, bringing this all forward, like those things slowed me down. And it wasn't until probably like later on in life, like 2020-ish, as I started really owning a lot of rentals, and I really started getting educated on scaling, I guess I'll
Okay.
say, and the need for it, that I realized, like, you go farther. And it was really when I started building a team and a business. And because back then you're just an operator, you're just like an individual hustler,
Right.
In the early
Yep.
days, I was just hustling. And then I realized you go farther together than you do alone. And
Yep.
when I look back, I realized how much time I wasted trying to be alone and just do everything on my own, because I was so narcissistic, where I wanted to be able to say I own 100% of stuff,
Yeah.
because to me it was
But
an
yeah.
ego thing. And I would hear guys like, and we would look down on local flippers, like we talk about
Yeah.
flippers all the time, you and I, and it's
Yeah.
like, dude, your local flippers, and that guy who has no money, but someone gave him money and he's outbidding you on a flip, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's because it's not his money. He doesn't. And we would look down on those guys, and it built this mentality up with me, kind of like that. You know what I mean? Where I
Yeah.
look down on people who were using other people's money, but I didn't realize that there's a benefit to that, and you go further with them, and then you
Yep.
also help them out. And like I was looking at it incorrectly, like you're hindering me, but really it's like we work together. And so when I got into mobile home parks, it was hard raising money. I went to
Okay.
friends and family first, trying to explain to everybody why I'm switching my business. And I need, we're buying a $1.3 million park, and you're not going to get a bank loan, right? Because you have no experience. Banks will not lend you money on a mobile home park if you have zero experience. They don't care
Okay.
about your single family. They don't care that you've been in business for 15 years. They're like, you've never owned a park. I'm not giving you money.
Right.
So raising capital was extremely hard, very
Okay.
hard.
How, and so was your first experience getting that from private, like your first one?
Yeah, so I went friends and family, and I raised the money through friends and family.
And they got
And
with you and
then,
that's okay. All right.
yeah, and they're very happy. We've took that park. It's now worth over 2 mil. So we've
Nice.
added some significant value to it. And we just started year 3 on it. So done a lot, and we're still doing a lot to it. So that's good. And then but yeah, so you could kind of see like there's a huge difference, but it's like when you make this transition, it's like you do need to raise the capital, even
The
if you're gonna get a
fundamentals.
loan.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
We're
you
big
know,
on teaching people the fundamentals of raising private money for, rehabs and rentals and things like that. So the fundamentals, I mean, aren't much different whether you're doing a big, huge $1.3 million mobile home park or a $200,000 flip. It's still the how's your money working for you? How
yeah.
can I make you make double digit returns or whatever the returns are on your money backed by real estate? And I think that's such a powerful thing that you said is when we first get started, the skill of raising capital to me outside of marketing is the most. You're not a true real estate investor unless you have that skill, right? Because you're gonna hit a ceiling. I don't care if you got $10 million in the
Yes.
bank, you're gonna hit that ceiling.
Yeah.
And when you learn how to help other people make money off of their money and you start giving good experiences off of that, that just grows exponentially. Because there's not, this is just my opinion, I'm not a financial advisor, anybody listening to this, but there's not a better resource than being able to lend on a real estate deal that's being bought at a percentage below value where you can make double digit returns backed by that asset, right? It doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't go up and down. You're consistently getting that double digit return because that's the fix and that's the mortgage. And
Yeah.
we can talk more about that in a different podcast. But I'll tell you what, that's awesome, man. So how many have you been able to do this with since then?
We're under contract on our fourth right now.
Nice,
So
nice. I'm gonna
we
be
we
nosy.
we
I'm gonna be
steward
nosy. What
about
is that? I'm
we
gonna be
steward
nosy.
a-
Oop, go ahead.
we steward about 170 lots with a portfolio value of about 6.5 mil.
Nice,
And then this one will put us closer to about 8.5, 9 mil
nice.
capital under asset value. portfolio size, and then put us around 250 lots under stewardship, under management.
That's badass, man. So when you get to a certain point, will the bank then loan to you?
So yes and no. You
Okay.
know, we're so I always try for seller finance.
Okay.
My first one had a seller finance piece to it. My second one, I paid all cash with investor
Okay.
capital, not me, I'm sorry, investor capital. And then the third one was, again, we had a little kind of like some bridge debt, investor capital, cash. So it was kind of a mixture of stuff. No banks involved in any of
Okay.
this. And now this last one that we're doing, we close next month. This is with a bank, and bro, it is like, and I'm trying to be a wiser, older, businessman, and understand I can't do this without the banks, and I need these relationships, and I get it, but it is like, they don't care. Again, they question everything.
Yeah.
They want like numbers that don't even make sense. Like, why do you need to see my 2021 returns? Like, what does that have to do with me managing this park
Yeah.
and this park itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
and they don't care about your background in anything but mobile home parks. And when you do parks, right, the general consensus is whatever the value of the park is, whatever your loan is going to be, is what your net worth has to be. And you need to have roughly about 10% of that in liquidity. So
Okay.
if you're taking down a $2 million park and you're gonna get a 70% LTV, you're gonna need like a 1.4, $1.5 million net worth, and you're gonna need 150K in liquidity just to even play ball with them. And that's if those are their standards. Some may have better. You need a good credit. You need, you know what I mean? They're gonna go
Right.
through everything. And then like this one, they want all my different businesses. They want everything. They want to see it all, not just me. They're trying to get
Yep.
this whole picture. And so a lot of times you bring on loan sponsors too, which is kind of unique because loan sponsors is where you're using their balance sheet and
Okay.
their net worth and their liquidity, and they come in and their sole job is just to get you the loan, and they don't do anything else. Like they facilitate the lending, deal with the lender, that type of stuff. But they're actually what's called a GP. I don't know if you're familiar with like
I'm not.
syndication terms, but in a syndication, you have a general partner, which is
Okay.
me, and you have a limited partner, which is you, who gives me the money.
Got it.
And so you'll get 70% of the equity, GPs get 30%. I
Okay.
bring on a loan sponsor, and this is all negotiable. You say, hey, listen, what do you say you come partner with me on this? I need you sponsor the loan, personal liability, all that stuff, right? And here's the deal, and I'll give you 20% of the GP, 20% of my 30% or 25 or whatever you negotiate.
Right.
And so they come in and now they're part of the GP class. You know what I mean?
All
So,
right.
but they don't put any money in. They're using their balance sheet to get a piece of the action. And so they get to invest with you with no capital at risk. Only their personal guarantee or their liability of the loan is what they're really at risk for. But
Got it.
generally, so am I and any other partner. All GPs technically have to have that personal liability depending on what goes on with that. So it's a different way of also raising capital because now you're allowing somebody who's maybe not an active investor, but maybe a passive person. They want a passive role, but they don't really want to put the money in. So, hey, do you want to be a loan sponsor?
Right.
And so that's a pretty unique way of how working with the bank. So that's kind of what I'm learning as we go. So on this one, we have a loan sponsor as part of our
Okay.
GP class, but when we're working through the bank and stuff on that. So
So let me ask you this. This is some pretty high level stuff, and I'm definitely interested in all this deeper level. How did you learn all this? Just from doing? Or did you go get you? We've talked briefly, and we're both really high on education, right? We wouldn't be here without learning something from somebody. When you got interested in mobile home parks, who did you learn from, or what did you invest in to get the nuts and bolts of all this stuff? Because that right there, I would probably just end up bankrupt if I didn't have somebody helping me.
Um, I do not have anybody helping me. I did recently, I write a blog, and through my blog, I met a guy who I've hopped on a couple calls with, and he's
Okay.
given me invaluable information. Towards the end of last year, I hopped on a few calls, but I went to in 2020 or 21, I went to one mastermind, like a
Okay.
conference talking about parks, which is where I was like, okay, like I
Okay.
could do this,
So
right?
that was the trigger.
But that was it. But otherwise, to give proper due, when
Yeah.
I bought that first park, I was traveling a lot and I listened to Andrew Keel, for Neiman. I want to make sure there's so many podcasts.
Okay.
And there's a couple more. Ah, anyway, I'm
That's
gonna
all
mess
right.
it up. But there's a few podcasts out there that I listen. I went all the way back in time and I nonstop. I'd be at the gym listening. I would
Yeah.
be running listening. I'd be driving listening, flying listening. I went through hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes, and that was pretty much. And I just sucked in the knowledge while I was dealing with this first park, which
Okay.
honestly was ideal because if I had listened to all that prior to getting my first park, it all would have went over my head.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Before that, really, it was just doing cold calling and trying to get a park was really, I was just
Just
learning.
trying
I
to
made
get
so
it.
many mistakes. Um, so there's this thing called a lagoon. Have you heard of a lagoon?
I have not.
So this is one of my like funny things about when I was doing it is a lagoon is basically a giant sewer that is a pond. Your sewage kind of goes through and empties into this lagoon, this pond, and
Okay.
bacteria forms and it helps dissolve. And it's basically an open sewage pit, but
Right. Got
nature works its course
it.
and cleans it up. And no, it doesn't really smell and all that stuff. Anyway, I was calling before I got my park. I had no idea what one of these fucking things was, and I'm on the phone. It was like a 96 or 100 and some lots. And I'm just like doing my thing. I'm like, oh man, yeah, I'm local to the area and we're chit chat. And I'm like, hey man, that's a really nice pond you got on your property. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, huh, is there any fish in there? Do you guys go fishing in it? And he's just like double take and he started asking me, he said, how many parks did you say you owned? And I lied. And he's like, how long have you been doing this? And he keeps asking me questions. And dude, like right there. And I didn't know I had messed up until he stopped picking up the calls for me. And then later on, I learned what a lagoon was. And I realized I basically asked this guy if he goes and fishes in a shit pond. And then I was like, oh, that was why that was it. I mean, that's why I didn't
So
get
you
that
didn't get the
one.
deal.
No, I definitely didn't get the deal. But it was really embarrassing after I had found out, and it's just one of those learning curves. But you learn as you go.
You take action,
So
man. I said that's the biggest thing in this whole realm of real estate is you took the action, and I think we're a lot in that category. Ready,
yeah,
shoot, aim. You shoot, you pull the trigger, and then you figure out where it's going to go afterwards, right? I think I
yeah.
think I think that's pretty powerful, man. I think that's good. So how do these things cash flow for you? When you get a park, you're up to 250 units. Like, what do the numbers look like?
So there's two types of parks,
Okay.
two types of homes in a park. You have your tenant-owned homes where the tenant comes in and parks their home on your land, and then you have park-owned homes where you own a home and you rent out the home itself, just like a regular rental.
Okay.
And if you want to know, we can dive into that. There's a whole argument about which one's better. There's a war.
Which
It's
one's
like
which one's better? Because
it's
this
like
one that I'm sitting
Capulet,
on,
Capulet and the Montagues.
it's half and
Um,
half, and this one that I'm sitting on
that's
right
ideal.
now.
A good mixture. I don't want to weave too far out, but a good mixture because there's a few elements of revenue that a park can generate,
Yep.
which allows you stability depending on the economy and being
Yeah.
able to have lot rent, home rent, utility fee, all these things help stabilize your income streams. And it's really nice to have those. And park owned homes do boost your cash flow because if you're getting lot rent of 450, but you have a 1,400 square feet home, maybe you're getting 1,000 for that. So you're getting extra like $600 on top of your lot rent. And
Nice.
so that becomes really nice for cash flow. Now the argument comes on mobile home repairs of, well, you have to repair that and it eats up that $600. And then the argument is, well, not really. And you can kind of go back and forth
Right.
with people. There's a lot of stats that really prove the tenant owned aspect of it. But I also think it comes down to quality of the home and age of the home. So for us, we have a cutoff of like, we want to be in the late 90s and early 2000s. If we're keeping homes, anything else we'll look to sell, which is
Okay.
another revenue aspect of it. So, and I'll weave back to your rental question about the
All right.
income. But when you get a home that you own, you can now sell or finance it out, sell it outright for cash, rent to own it. So you have these different ways of making money with a mobile home park, which is again, as I started learning, I'm like, okay, like I can really do this. Like
Right.
there's a lot of pieces here that I feel are really good to help investors and ourselves really build wealth and protect us, which stocks, bonds, traditional assets couldn't.
Yeah.
So when you have all those things, so you could sell a home for $5,000 and get a big influx of cash, answering your cash flow question, right?
Yeah.
You could rent out lots at 450 stable. They're not leaving. Typically, those people stay for like 8-9 years, I think is the stat. Like they'll stay 9+ years. And then you get your home rent, extra cash flow, but those people typically leave 18 to 24 months. So you have a higher churn.
Okay.
Um, Now on the park themselves, like, so our one park, like when we bought it, we were 19K, but it really wasn't pulling in 19K because this fucker had people who weren't paying. Um, but it was like, dude, I was going to the park and I was collecting cash because you buy these things and there's no systems in place. So one of the biggest things that you could do as an operator is add professionalism.
Yeah.
And so you come in and you have all these systems and all this stuff, and but no one was hooked up. So I was flying out and traveling every single month and staying out there, and I was collecting. I was like a drug dealer, bro. I'm like collecting. I would be walking down the streets with like 15, 20 grand in my pocket, getting on the plane, and I was just hoping I wasn't going to get mugged. And until eventually we got our online systems in place at that first park. And so now we're better each time we take on a park. We're quicker with that. And so that doesn't happen. Me collecting cash is a very rare thing anymore. Um, but now that park, we're up to close to 26K in revenue,
Nice.
and there's different levers you could pull too. So like the cash flow is good. Now, to go back and we back to where you're saying what's the actual cash flow like, we talk top line numbers. So
Yeah.
your bottom line typically is going to run anywhere, if it's a tenant owned park, around 30 to 35. It really percent expense ratio because it
Okay.
depends on go so deep. It depends on what the utilities are. So
Okay.
you may be used to tenants pay their utilities, but in a park, you own that big chunk of land and the infrastructure running underneath belongs to you.
Got it.
So maybe the utility company hooked a water meter at your front yard and then they bill you for the entire park and now you have to bill everybody back. And
Ah,
what's your recapture rate? You might not be recapturing 100% of your money. You might actually be losing money and only recapturing 75% of your water costs. Plus,
got
there
it.
could be leaks, right? So, but you can start instituting these bill backs of utility fees to help boost your income as well. But now, if you own your own like park owned homes, I typically like to see a 40 to 45% expense ratio. But what we found is where when we're taking them over and the initial like onslaught of repair requests, we're more like 50 to 60% expense ratio. So
Okay.
park owned homes are a big drag on your bottom line initially, especially if they're low quality homes.
Okay.
So we like to somewhere fall like between that 40-41 when we have a mix park owned and tenant owned. We want to kind of average out in that 40% expense ratio range. And that's including property taxes, insurance, management fees, all those things that are in there, if that
That's
makes
everything.
sense.
That's everything. Just like you're analyzing a regular a burr for a house, you want all
Yes.
your expenses in there, and then that'll give you your final number, the real number,
Yeah.
the net.
And then you know whether you could cover your mortgage or your pref rate. Like when I promise investors preferred rates of return, I have to be able to perform. So like our investors will get anywhere from 7 to 9% of a preferred rate of return to invest with us. And that's cumulative, meaning if we miss anything, they get it back when we refinance or sell. Whatever they miss, they get that back before any money's distributed.
Right.
Um, and we have to make sure we meet those pref rates. And so we're
Got it.
running our numbers to see, and the expense ratio really matters. So you have these levers, right? When you're talking cash flow, and it's like, okay, well, if I'm making 20 grand on just the rent, as an example, but I'm paying the water, and I got septics, and I got to cut the lawn, and I got dumpsters.
Right.
So we bought one park, right? And the rents were $1.75. Bro, I don't even know how they were losing money. The only thing keeping them afloat was the RV lot in the back of the park. But
Really.
they paid for the water, they paid for the sewer, they paid for the dumpster. I mean, they paid for everything. These people were pretty much paying $1.75 in a market that should be 450. They're getting all their
Oh
utilities
wow.
covered. You know what I mean? Like, and these people were just hemorrhaging money, except for the RV lot was basically floating them. If you took that RV income out, the mobile home park itself was losing money. So what do? We come in, we take over the landscaping and make it look more professional. We install water meters. So that way we could track water meter usage and
Right.
bill them back for it. And we also charge maintenance fees. So not maintenance fee like you're thinking of, but if you look at your bill at home and you look at like Ohio County, wherever you're at, Dayton, Ohio County water, and there's going to be a fee on there. It's not just your water usage. There's a list of fees that they put
Yeah.
on because they have to maintain those lines. They have to maintain that meter.
Yeah.
So I had talked to somebody, I'd mentioned him before, and he gave me this most wonderful advice. And he educated me on the levers of income in a park.
Okay.
And we started talking about recapturing income. And I just said what everyone says in the industry. I was like, well, we're going to build them for the water and we hope to recapture 75% of our. And he says, why is that? He started questioning. He started educating me. And I was like, yeah, you're right. He's like, did you know that the water companies charge this? And so why shouldn't you? He's like,
Ah,
he's like, you're charging them for the use of for their consumption of the water, but what about who pays for the pipes when they leak that they're using? You're not using those. He's like, what
makes
about
all
your
the sense in the
septic
world.
systems? You're pumping out septics and replacing them. They're if they were anywhere else, they'd have to pay a sewer line. They'd have to pay a sewer bill.
Yeah.
Why aren't and nobody in this industry really talks about it. Like they always gloss over on podcasts about build backs and all this, but they never really hone in on it. And here this guy is just breaking it down for me. And that was probably like September or whatever last year. And at that
Nice.
point, I like started redoing stuff. And sometimes for some parks, I have to wait for the leases, to come due to redo my lease to include those. But we'll come through and we'll now bill you for water. We add on a meter fee if we put meters on.
Yep.
We'll add on a line maintenance fee and we'll add on a sewer maintenance. We add these things on, we bill you back for the trash and we break it down based on we look at our bill, we divide it by the lots and we say, here you go.
Yep.
And they'll all complain. I just was dealing with it yesterday where I told the guy he was more than happy to pull his trailer out and freaking leave because he accused me of stealing his money because he thinks I'm not reading the meters and I'm just billing him for water that he's not using. And I was like, I'm sorry you feel that way. But if you really feel that we're dishonest and we're taking advantage of you, nobody is stopping you from giving your notice that you want to non-renew your lease and leave.
Yeah.
I was like, you just let me know and I'll make it happen for you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's fine. But bro, like you've literally been living in this park for a decade for 175. Like, come on, man. Like,
Wow.
are you
That's like living for free, man.
So I write a blog, right?
Right.
The MHP operator blog. And it's like, I write articles about this, which is how I get educated because I have to learn and then educate and write. And so you have research. The thing is like these people, when you do that, it's actually a disservice to them. It is a disservice to charge low rent. And that sounds crazy. And people are like, that's just a landlord saying that. It's
No.
because it's such an unrealistic thing that
Yep.
if they want to leave, there's nowhere for them to go on the budget that they've set aside for this $175 rent, that they'll be extremely market shocked when they go out and they realize that they need to pay $450 somewhere
Yep.
else and they can't afford that. So if you do kick them out, they're now not set up for success. So by
Yep.
raising rents to market, not beyond market, but by raising rents, you're actually helping them because what we do is we raise slope. We don't
Mhm.
just, we didn't go from 175 to 450. Our first raise was 175 to 225. We didn't institute all of our bill backs all at once. We still have to bill back for the trash and the lawn, but I instituted water and sewer, meter fees, and a raise in rent. And this year I'm going to raise the rent slightly again, and I'm going to add on the trash. So I've been eating those costs because I
Yep.
also don't want to lose tenants. So it's a slow go. And when we pro forma it out, we usually plan on bringing current residents to market over like a 3 to 5 year time horizon, depending on how low the rents are to market. We
Right.
estimate. And we work with them to do that. But this park is a perfect example of people being unhappy no matter what. Like no matter what we could do, they're just unhappy, feeling like we're ripping them off and how dare we raise the rent because they haven't had a rent raise in 5 or whatever years because the old owner was just happy to have the income and didn't want to ruffle any feathers.
It seems like to me, listening to this with no experience in parks at all, the fundamentals are all still the same as just regular real estate, how you find a house. Like our biggest niche for finding single families is out of state landlords, right? Same exact scenario of the reason they're selling the absentee owner is because they've had a tenant in there forever. They've never raised the rents. They're still at 10 year ago numbers. And now it's to the point where they have to fix up the house because they never took care of anything. Is that the same model as the park? It's like they just haven't taken care of anything. The maintenance is gone. Everything's gone. They never raised anything because they didn't want to deal with it. And now they have to
I would
sell it at a discount to someone that wants to buy it and make all those improvements.
I would argue with you about that a discount thing. No one wants to sell at a discount, but
No?
when reality strikes, yeah, I mean everyone has their number pie in the sky. They see what the other parks sell for, and they're like mine, and you have to break it down and be like, dude, like you have no books, you have a shoebox of
Yeah.
collections, you have no deposits, you collect cash. I can't prove this. But yes, to answer your question bluntly, that is, I would say, maybe I'm making this up. I have no statistical facts for this. 50%, 60% of the market is those people, mom and pops.
Yeah.
I think 25, I'm going to mess this stat up, but I believe it's like 23 to 25% of the mobile home parks. There's 44,000 mobile home parks in the US, and I think 25% are actually professionally managed. The rest are managed by mom and pops. So there
Yeah.
is still a huge demographic of what you're talking about. People who developed the park or bought it and owned it for 20, 30 years. And eventually, like, it died down. I was looking at one up in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and this would be my second park. I was so hungry. I was like, just anything, dude. I was willing to buy it. I didn't give a shit. And I listened. I believed everything this owner said. And I went and visited the
Oh,
park, and it was dilapidated. And what I realized is I was, hindsight's 2020, replaying all of our convos. This guy was basically raping it for cash flow. He hadn't done any repairs. The houses were falling apart, tarps everywhere. Yeah, dude, you're collecting 18 or whatever grand a month. But bro, like, and he admitted, he's like, I got a good lifestyle. This thing pays for me. It's paid off. So when it's paid off, and even though it's making 18,
yeah.
he's living his life off of that cash flow, and he's become accustomed. So an 18 is gross. So I'm sure he has taxes and insurance and the manager and these things that he does and the lawn, but maybe he's walking away with 9, 10K a month, 12K, whatever it is. He's
Right.
using that to live. So when an AC goes out and it's 5 grand, well, you tell me,
Yeah.
Rick, like, you need 12 to live because you've been doing it. This AC goes out, that cuts in 50% of your living expenses. You'll just put a window unit in.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
now this AC
Band-Aid.
sits the band-aid it. And so that starts happening a lot. And so that's what we find, like I said, the majority of the time is those things. But there's also sellers who, like the one I rejected was the other month, and I really wish I still would have bought it. I really want that part, but it was fucked up. That guy was he owned it, but he owned it himself. He hired a third party manager. The managers let it get dilapidated. He was hemorrhaging money, and he was trying to repair it, but he was losing money every month when I went through the books because every dime he was making was going back into the park. He had way too many employees. It was a clusterfuck. The manager was just mismanaging it, and the park was becoming disrepaired. When homes went vacant, he couldn't repair them fast enough based on the cash flow he had available. So
Right.
again, it comes down to available cash flow versus capital that you invest. So
Right.
people use their cash flow to fix these things up. People like me come in, I go to you and I say, Rick, I'm buying this park for 2 million. And we need to put, I'm making this up, 500 down. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, what are you raising? Well, I'm raising 2 mil. Well, why? You only need 500 to buy it. Well, I
Yeah.
need the other 1.5 to come in and fix all this up. So we budget for those things,
Right.
bring that money in and hit the ground running. But when you own it for that long, you don't have $1 million sitting down to go fix the roads, fix the utilities, fix the homes. You literally just use your operational cash flow. And as far as that can be stretched, and if it can't, you let the home sit.
Yeah.
And so that's where people like us come in, and it's like a flip. Mom
Yeah.
and pop, the Mary Joe living in her home, can't fix the roof, remodel the kitchen, and do the bathroom, and fix the floor joists and all that stuff. You can, because you come in and you say, okay, I'll buy it at 100. I got 50K cash to rehab this thing, 150 in, I'm gonna sell it for 210 or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And you come prepared. Mary Joe doesn't have 50K to rehab it, so she sells it to you. And it's the same concept,
Same
right?
concept. Yeah.
It
What do
is.
you say to people? What's the exit on these? When you get it all repositioned, increase the values, everything's rolling. Are you refining out and keeping them forever, or are you selling? Like, what's the exit?
Yes.
Yeah, keeping them.
So, I mean, I got into this because I wanted to scale and I wanted to run a really large operation. So we have a goal of 100 parks. And the
Okay.
reason why is people always say I want lots, and I say parks because I forget who it was. Somebody said, imagine if you like to predict your future. They say, imagine you've reached all your goals. And you look
Okay.
at and you meet that person from, let's say, 20 years in the future. What is that person? And say, would you like to know that person? What skills does that Brandon have?
Right.
And so when I really started working backwards, I was like, man, like, imagine what it would take to run 100 parks, regardless of the lots. Maybe it's 1,000 lots, maybe 100 parks equals 10,000. Either way, I got these 100 different properties. Imagine the team I have to have, the skill I have to manage that. Because if I say 1,000 lots, what if I only buy 3 parks that total 1,000 lots? I
Right.
don't really need the skill set to manage 3 parks within a mile radius from each other.
Right.
But imagine if you had 100. So that's kind of our goal. And to get that, it's got to be a long-term type of hold. So what we do is we come in and we have a 5 to 7 year time horizon, depending on the park, depending on the loan structure. Our
Okay.
first one had a 7 year balloon, so we have a 7 year time horizon. It's a 3% loan, seller finance, so it makes sense to keep it until for the full term.
Yep.
And so when that comes, we'll go refinance it, pull up the equity out. We will return our investor capital to them, so we have 0 capital at risk, divvy up whatever is left, 70-30 or whatever the splits are between GP or LP and GP. They get the 70, we get the 30. And then we go 50-50 into perpetuity.
Okay.
There's no guaranteed prefs, there's no any of that. It's just the operational cash flow is 50-50. If we sell it or refinance again, it's 50-50. And our goal is to keep it into perpetuity, because when you syndicate, you buy shares. So
Right.
you're coming in and Rick's buying 100 shares in this part. You could pass those shares down. Your
Okay.
kids can get those shares. Your kids, and not you specifically, but let's say your kids are just the normal and they are doctors or they're mechanics or plumber, whatever they are, they're
Right.
not real estate people. So they don't want to run a park. So like that second one we got, those kids inherited it from their parents who were dying. They let it run into the ground because they didn't want to run a park.
Right.
You don't want that for an inheritance. So what we do is with the syndication model, you can pass those shares down. We continue to operate it and we just keep cutting the distribution check to the owner of those shares, that LLC that's getting those shares or whatever it is, right? So it's a potential long-term hold, not just for us, but for our investors, our limited partners as well. And that's kind of who our avatar, our limited partner demographic is the people looking for long-term investments that they can park money in, diversify their portfolio, and build wealth while generating income.
Right.
So just some stats, right? Average stocks typically are going to be, around 6%, 8% return. Average dividend is around 3%. So you're looking maybe a 9.5 to 10% with a dividend on, if a dividend paying stock, you're getting 9. Well, our pref rates alone are 7 to 9%. That's on your quarterly distributions. But when you talk about returning capital and loan proceeds and refining it out, we're talking about double-digit returns, where typically we look to 2x our capital. So after fees, investors are getting 16 to 18% average annual returns. And then they still own the asset and they're still getting cash flow distributions. That's something that stocks and those things in mutual funds and index funds can't beat. So you get a higher return. Exactly, right? You could pass stock down to your kids, but you can't sell it and get the money. You can't, the dividends, unless you own a ton of dividends, they're not really doing much, right? Like you're not living off of those unless you happen to get into a stock early. You got a huge investment in it. But with this, you can. And of course, we have the art of depreciation, right? Like where real estate helps you. It's really tax efficient, mobile home parks, because it's personal property. So it really helps us with our tax efficiency aspect of it. So you get those benefits. You get the equity, the income, the wealth, the diversification, and you get the tax advantages of lowering your tax liability through it. So it really is a pretty good thing when you're talking about like what our hold is. And even when we refi it and get money back, you're still depreciating that asset. So like all these things really make mobile home parks, which is what I didn't realize about single family. Circling it all back when I talked about no matter how hard I worked, single family, dude, like what is it doing for me? My house is only worth as much as Mary's down the road.
Right. Yeah.
So I could be the best landlord. And that's what bothered me because I was a good landlord. But when I went to sell the home, I just sold it at whatever the comps on the street were selling it. So it didn't matter. Same thing, honestly, with like duplexes and stuff. Like I know it matters a little more what they're making, but again, a duplex is a duplex. What the other duplexes are selling for is what yours is going to sell for. Maybe
Comparable model. Yeah.
Maybe somebody will pay you a little more because it's making more money and they're desperate 1031 or something. But again, like you're not doing it. But mobile home parks, 5-7 year time horizon. Well, what if I do it all in 2 years? I force that appreciation. I can get that value a lot faster, whereas single family, I just have to wait for the comparables in the market to appreciate for me to get that ever. So that was what I was looking for. So to be honest, I went and I did look at apartments, and I was really interested in apartments, but apartments I think are like 70-80% professionally managed. So there's not a lot. And then I looked at offices, and I looked at and I owned like an office mixed use building, and I didn't like it. And I was like, okay, I sold that. And, I tried all these different things, and I fell into mobile home parks, and I was like,
Nice.
I get the best of residential, affordable housing, helping families, what I was really good at, but I get the mechanics of commercial real estate,
Got it.
where I get appreciation of value. The harder I work, the more I improve the property. There's no limit to what a park can be worth, right? If I have a 36 unit park and every other 36 unit park is selling for $1 million because they're all making 20K a month, but I'm a great landlord and I'm making 40K a month, my park now becomes worth twice as much.
Yeah.
If I run it efficient with low expenses, it's worth even more. And that is why I got out of single family, because I wanted to be valued for my skill, my intelligence, and my work ethic. I wanted my mind's effort to be valued appropriately. And I felt like my mind's effort was not being valued in the single family space. And I
Okay.
needed something that would do that. And personally, I feel that people who are in single family only do so because it's all they know. And I
I would
feel
I
that,
would agree.
and right. And it's like, and that was all I knew. Why are you buying homes, Rick?
Why do I buy homes?
Because they come across your desk
Because they
and it's a
come
good deal.
and it's a great, yeah, it's a good deal. It's a great way to make abundance of cash to buy, to flip, to go buy long-term assets, which for us are single
It's
family
single family.
home out
And
there.
you buy those because they come across your desk. You're like, this is at a discount. But again, it's a waste of your time. If you really think about this and you break it down, and I'm not trying to convert you,
No, you're
you
good.
have how many rental, just rough as 10, 20, 30? What do you got?
Just right at 25 right now.
Okay. Are they all in the same street?
No, they're all in the same city.
Same city?
Yeah.
Same neighborhood?
Primarily in one or two zips.
Zip codes. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to travel across an entire city with traffic to get to every one of those units. Do you manage them yourself?
No,
So you have a third party manager,
no,
right?
I have I have my sister handles all that.
Okay. So yourself. So it's
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
your organization.
Organization.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
I show up to Little Rock. All 36 of my homes are on two streets. I can
Yep.
walk that whole park and meet all 36 tenants in one morning. Within it, I've done it. So it takes me 2 hours to walk the park and talk to people. So in about 2 hours, I have met and talked to anybody, unless there's a little old lady who wants to talk to me for a lot longer. And then I could be there for like 45 minutes talking about cats. But, and so so I was driving all over the county. All my stuff was in Polk County. I had a couple in Osceola and all that. But again,
Yeah.
primarily all in one county. And it's like, it's not scalable. And so I think the problem I was having was I just kept questioning myself. It
Okay.
didn't make sense. And I have this rule: when things don't make sense, you have to ask why and how. And I kept coming down, well, this is what I know. I was a realtor, I was a broker, I was a foreclosure agent, I did flips, these things, I'm wholesaling, and how do I say no to this house at like, it's up 80 grand that I can rent for 1,500? Like, how do you say no to that? It's right there. I got the hard money guy. It's so easy.
Yeah.
But opportunity cost of capital, is it worth my time? Is that the best use of my time? Is that the best use of my capital? And if you really look at it, the answer is no. When you look at single families are actually the worst investment you could make. And the reason why is they were never, ever, 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 and I don't care what anyone says, they were never meant to be rentals. Single family homes were meant for people to buy, own, and live in. But how it all started, you move, you keep your home, and you rent it out. And then maybe you buy another one. And it's easy. You call the realtor that sold you your home, they help you. You can use the same bank that sold you, that you got the loan on your home, put 20% down, get an investment loan. Like, it's easy. And so people do it, but it's not a scalable asset. It was
Okay.
never meant to be scalable, and it's not efficient. So I have one plumber who manages all 36 of my units. And that guy also travels over to my other 68 unit park. So I had one plumber, one AC guy, one handyman managing 100, when I had my rentals all over, this plumber down here in South Lakeland wasn't driving over to Lake Wales or Polk City or wherever it was. I would need 2 or 3 plumbers to
Yeah.
manage. I now had to have multiple roofer. Well, not the roofer, he would travel for me, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So it started to become a lot more work. And the more you scale, the more you find it's difficult. So right now you're blessed. You have 20 some homes in a couple zip codes. But if you want to get to 100 or 200, there's I would find it hard to believe that you're going to find those extra 200 all in the same zip code. You might have to go into another zip code. Might have to, so it depends on your appetite. The
Right.
more you want to scale, the wider you have to throw to find those homes in today's market.
Right.
Now, if this was 2009 when entire neighborhoods were up for sale, totally different
Different,
scenario.
different
But we're
world.
talking
Yeah.
about today's economy.
Right.
And so I started looking at all those things and I was like, well, I do want to own like 200, 500 rent because your cash flow is the same as my cash flow. If you're cash flowing $200 a unit, I'm cash flowing $200. It's the same thing. A mobile home is a single family residence, essentially.
Right.
It's a 3 bed, 2 bath, 4 walls on its own lot. They got a driveway, they have a porch. It's the same thing.
Right.
But I own in 3 deals almost, I own whatever 2.5 times more than you, making the same cash flow by only doing 3 deals. You had
Right.
to do 25 individual deals, 25 loans, or however you structure them. You know what I mean? You had, and so it's just not scalable. But wholesalers and flippers, they always buy single family because it's all they know.
It's out of
And
the
so
entry point. Yeah.
it's the entry point, and that was my entry point, and that's what I kept doing. It wasn't until I realized what I wanted. I worked on my goals and I started working backwards that I realized I needed a better asset class. And
I
I
think
was,
that's awesome. Do you physically go up and handle like what you briefly mentioned your team a little bit to oversee that total 240 units? What's your, I know your construction side, you talked about the plumber and the HVAC guy and all that. What's your internal team look like? Do you have any assistants or VAs
yeah.
or any of that?
Um, so we have a very small team right now. So our best team, I love to give her props, is our bookkeeper accountant.
Okay.
I went through like 3 or 4 of them, made so many, that's a whole episode. I wrote 2 articles
Right.
about it, but it's like her, we have a leasing person, an operations person, and then me, and then we have our community managers on site. And then of course we have our vendors. So it's a very small team, but here's the thing is like, we can handle that because it's going to be 3 properties. It's 170 lots, soon to be 250. But so we're able to handle that because it all is all located within one property on 10 acres or 20 acres. That manager can go and handle 36 people for me with a text message,
Right.
go post notices, right? So but as I scale, like right now, when we buy this 250, I already know the next employee I have to hire, right? So we buy that
What's
part.
that?
I know I need a full-time. So my leasing person is also helping operations and
Okay.
administration. So and she really excels at that administration and operations aspect. I want a full-time leasing person because there's some stuff on our leasing side that is getting neglected. So I want a full-time leasing manager. So we could really stay on point with our leases and updates and community rule books and all those things. And
Okay.
so I want a full-time person with that because I think I can bring my vacancy rates down or my time to occupancy from when it goes vacant to there. I think if I have that, and then after that, I need someone to help me with the construction. So I need another part. So as I buy things, I'm already bolting on these other employees that I know that I need. And so I created an Excel sheet where I had everyone in the company and our team. I was like, put down
Right.
everything that you do and what overlaps and what department you think it belongs to. And I started looking and I go, okay, well, she's doing like 3 different departments. This person's
Okay.
doing 4. I'm doing like every department. And so I was like, who do I need to make everyone focus on one type of thing, one department? And
Right.
so that's where we're going to go with it. But you can run with that quantity of tenants, you can run a really efficient team. But
Okay.
as you grow, you need more people too.
I think this is awesome, man. You have a lot of knowledge, especially with just being introduced to, what'd you say, 2020?
Yeah.
That's a lot. So you do you write a blog about this. You help people like me that don't know anything about anything. Tell me about the blog. Like what's that look like? How often do you put up new content? Where's it at? What's that look
So
like?
it's the mhpoperator.com.
Okay.
And I write two types of articles, one about passive investing of what you should look for as a passive investor, and two just about operations. So I'll go behind the deal, behind the operations. I'll break down the park or the problem or what we do in a specific situation. And we talk about it. Evictions, like my last one was about evictions, about how I handled this eviction and what you run into in that and the process for it and our strategy. So I just share openly because it's a way for me to just, you learn better when you teach others, right?
Yeah.
And so
100%.
for me, it's a way that I learn as I put my thoughts down about why I do something, how I do it. And I also, when I do it, I find flaws in what we do because you're really writing all this stuff down. So it's cathartic, but also educational. And I put that out there. So every week I write a different article. I've missed like when I'm the 1 week I missed because I was traveling for 2 weeks. There was 2 weeks where it didn't go because I was doing due diligence. We hooked up the RV, me and my son, bro. Like my son helps me. And
Nice.
he collects rent note. He'll go and collect rent. He's 9, and I've
That's
taught
awesome.
him. He's done work at the parks. He's installed mailboxes. He collects rent. He puts late notices. One time he put a late notice on the wrong house, and the lady tracked me down and was like, "I don't owe you rent." And I had to look at my son, and I was like, "Bro, you gave the wrong notice." She goes, "This is not me." So he's made some mistakes, but he loves it. Me and him, we were under contract on 2 parks.
Nice.
We won and one we canceled, and then we had to go out to 2 others of ours. So we hooked up the RV. We took like 2.5 weeks. I think it was like 2 weeks, and we traveled through Georgia and Arkansas. We stopped to see my daughter in Alabama, and we just stayed. We lived in the parks. And so,
Nice.
like the one that we were buying at an RV park next door, we stayed there and we were able to go check out that park at night. In the morning, we walked the dog. I brought my dog. We walked the dog through the park, watched the tenants, looked at the home. It was a much different way to get an angle on the park versus you fly in, you do your walkthrough with the owner, and then you go back to your hotel and you leave.
Leave.
So
Yeah.
here I was like, okay, and I didn't tell the owner I was staying next door. And so when we were done, they went home and went back to the park and just wandered around. We did it at night, both nights and in the morning and in the afternoon. And we really got a good feel for that park, which I
Nice.
wasn't able to do on others. And then in my other parks, we just lived there. We'd stay
Cool.
for 3 days and we'd see what the park's like at night. And I think our investors like that we're very hands on because not only do they get to see the stories in the articles that I send them and email them, but
Yeah.
they see my videos on social media and they know like I'm actually hands on. The capital that they've entrusted me with, I'm not just sitting at a desk in Florida. I am at the parks every month. I am traveling. If something's wrong, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to figure it out, or I'm going to live in that park for a week at a time in an RV or something. And I'm going to meet the tenants. I'm going to let them come to me and complain and I'm going to figure it out. Not going
Right.
to promise that it's always going to be uh, the best thing where the tenants are happy. Sometimes there's arguments and fights
Yeah.
and but I'm there doing that. The managers know I'm coming and I'm staying to help them. And so I think those things help. And I write about that. But while I'm traveling, I don't write my blog because it takes a lot of time. It usually takes me a week to write one of my articles.
I think
Not a bit.
that's so valuable, especially for people that don't know. Again, this is totally out of left field for me, and it's interesting. Real estate has layers, right? Most people, as you know, get involved with watching the YouTube video or going to the first event. Everybody wants to be a wholesaler. Nothing wrong with wholesaling. I think
Mhm.
wholesaling teaches you a great skill on how to find deals. But then there's layers where you might evolve into the flips, and then you evolve into the rentals, and now you've taken it one step farther into a totally different asset class. But it's cool how the fundamentals of all of it tie together, right? Finding the deal, talking to people, doing your due diligence, all that stuff it just proves that, for anybody watching this, no matter where you're at today in this business, there's layers. You may be a
Yeah.
wholesaler today, but you might have a freaking commercial building, a skyscraper in 20 years, or you might have 250 units as a mobile home guy. It just doesn't matter, but the skills and fundamentals all stay the same. I like that. Where can we find you on social media?
At MHP operator, through across all
MHP app.
social media. Yeah.
Yeah.
And dude, like for somebody like you, I definitely think mobile home parks, like if you're willing to do the work,
Yeah.
and you have that skill, I think guys like us have a unique skill set because mobile home parks, even if you don't own the home and they're tenant owned, right? Yes, like some of them are 50-50 or whatever. You have a lot of these guys that come in I break down mobile home park operators and what I call a complete operator or a desk operator. You know what I mean? And like there's different types, and the people that sit behind the desk, people come from corporate world, they don't know about
Mhm.
framing and roofing. They don't know how to talk to contractors. And
Yeah.
so when you hear them complain about park-owned homes, it's mostly because it's their first time in real estate. They're good at capital raising. They have this skill set and the credentials, and they're able to buy these things. But they don't know how to talk to the Joe, the roofer, and the plumber, and they get taken advantage of. And like they don't know those things, so they complain about it. Where guys like us, it's second nature to us.
Yeah.
We can go out, rekey a property ourselves, meet the plumber, talk the talk, meet the health inspectors, and all those guys. With that being said, do learn it, but we come in with that skill set
It's the
right
skill set.
away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you can handle those what we call value add parks, or like a flip, what you call a flip, we call a value add mobile home park, and we
Okay.
can handle that business strategy of rehabbing that park because we've done it in these homes. If you could do it in one home or two homes simultaneously, there's no difference between you running a park. So you flip, right? Well,
Yeah.
I flip too. So I've had to turn, like last year in the one park, we call it turnovers. We made ready about 9, 10 units. We had to do full on renovations. Those are mini flips with inside
Yeah.
what you do. I still have to do. I have to order the materials, coordinate the handyman, set a budget, bring them all in. You know what I mean? Like I have flips happening within my park because I own those homes.
Right.
And so it's that skill set. So I do think somebody like you or other flippers, if this is what they're interested in, it is a very, what's the word, like correlated
Yeah.
type of skill that you
It's in
can
alignment.
do.
It's in
Yeah.
alignment with what you do. Construction is a skill, and I tell people, I think what was your were you involved in any construction or any of that pre real estate life?
Pre-real estate, no, but when I was starting flipping, I had to do a lot of the
You
work.
you
Like I
you
was
dove
there.
you dove into it.
I would
Okay.
lay tile and stuff, and I learned tile from one of my guys, and I was laying travertine with him, and he taught me how to lay tile. And from there, I would just help out laying tile and stuff, and demos. I would do the demos, trash
Yeah.
outs. I would do all the stuff because it was all my money, and
Right.
anything I could do to save money. And I bring that same mindset to parks, and I'm sure you would too.
Yeah.
It's like if I'm out at a park and something needs done, I got my tools and I'm just
Right.
going to go rekey that home, install that mailbox, fix that skirting. Why am I going to charge my investors by hiring somebody to come and do this when I could just do it?
Right.
And I know it's a little bit of money, like, installing a mailbox, whatever, 50, $100, someone's going to charge you. But still, it shows a good steward. Like, I care about the money that you've given me,
Right.
which the one thing you haven't asked, right? And this is it. This is a big lesson is let me ask you, do you think when you manage rentals, I know you said your sister, but it's like a lot of guys, they hire realtors or third party people to
Yeah.
manage their properties?
Tried that. Tried
And
that.
what'd you think? What'd you think?
We got robbed. We got robbed
What do you
blind.
mean?
Oh man, it's easy. Property management can not everybody, but property management can be the biggest thieving, most non-trustworthy industry on the planet if you don't know what you're doing and
Yeah.
you don't know what you're looking for.
So you had a bad egg?
Oh, two. Yeah.
Oh, two, you went through two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and you're paying 10%?
Yeah, plus all the extra upcharge fees that come from basically everything they do. Every time they get out of bed in the morning, you get charged $500. So
And
yeah,
then the placement, they're like, I want first month's rent for finding this tenant, stuff like that.
placement
And
placement where the red flag for us was well, when we started keeping rentals, it was the entrepreneurial thing to do. You didn't want to manage your own thing. You wanted time freedom, so you want to hire management, right?
yeah,
That's what the book said. And then you realize, I am from construction. I've been a commercial industrial electrician my whole life, and I saw that I was getting all these $495 charges for my rentals. And
yeah,
come to find out, they gave the maintenance guy uh, freedom to fix anything in the property as long as it wasn't over $500.
yeah.
So
That's what it is.
I'll never forget the day it happened. My sister found it. It was two strainers. You can buy strainers at Home Depot for $27 for two of them, and it was $495. And I said, now wait a minute. We'll come to find out anything and everything that needed fixed was $495 because that was their
Because he
allowance
didn't need approval. He
just
didn't
to
need
walk in
approval.
the door. Yeah, man. And that was it for me. So we went back and tracked that. My sister found just all sorts of stuff. And that was it. I said, let's figure out how to do this in house. And that's how she came on full time and that to handle our books as well.
See, and you learn the hard way, and I did not. So my dad always said there's dumb people, smart people, wise people. Dumb people never learn from their mistakes. Smart people learn from them, and wise people learn from other mistakes.
Yeah.
I like to think that generally I'm in that smart category, although I teeter to dumb sometimes.
Don't we
But in
all?
this one instance, I was wise because when I first started, I was going to hire, because I was a realtor and I did property management
Yeah.
for other people, right? That was just part of my business as a broker, my brokerage. And I was like, okay, I'm going to find somebody that can do this for me. And I started looking around and asking questions. Everybody was like, in the mobile home park industry, it's like, no, you have to do it yourself. And dude, I didn't want to,
Yeah.
because I wanted time freedom. I wanted to
Yeah.
buy this thing with other people's money and not do. And that one person, it was in Facebook. I'm pretty sure it was a Facebook group. I don't know who it was to this day. I owe them a drink or a dinner or something, right?
Right.
And long message about why. And I looked at my wife and I was like, well, guess we're managing this ourselves. We got to figure out how to do that. So we had to open another LLC. And here's the reason why. Mobile home parks are not like any other asset. It's not an apartment. There's so many different pieces. The framing's not the same. The door's not the same. The tubs, the toilets, nothing's the same. The realtors make money off of volume.
Yeah.
They don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
They want as easy as possible. And mobile home parks already have thin margins, another 10% on top, and then the fees that you're talking about. And it just doesn't work in mobile home parks. And I have countless stories from other investors who have run into the same story that you just gave.
Yeah.
Commingling of funds, incorrect, like invoices being charged that shouldn't have been. The biggest one for me, though, as a flipper, I know how much things cost.
Yeah.
And I know where I can save money. And
Yeah.
again, my investors blessed me to steward their money. And this is all I get. This is my money. I can't go back for more. If I do, it ruins my reputation. It's called a capital call.
Yeah.
So I need to make this money work. The only way I could do that is if I control it. And I need to buy the cheapest, not the cheapest, but the most value add materials and make sure I'm not doing any more or less than I should to get this thing turned over. And so that's a big aspect of it. Whereas a house, dude, I've seen realtors, just like you said, they don't price shop. They have a plumber in their brokerage that does everyone else's stuff. They just call that plumber. There's not, like, I just got a quote to paint a house. Listen, it's 1,200 square feet. How much do you think it costs to paint a house?
1,200 square feet. I'd say what?
Two.
7-8 grand.
$15,000.
Really?
And I was like, what the bro? He's like, oh, it sounds like a budget thing for you. And he's like, it's going to take me 200 man hours. I'm like, 200 man hours to do 1,200 square feet?
Yeah.
That's like 6 square feet an hour, bro. Like,
yeah.
You could, what are you standing in this corner painting for like this 1 hour to do this 6 square foot block? Like,
right.
So I got right now I'm waiting on like 3 more quotes. Like,
yeah.
But most people, like property managers, they just get a quote and they're like, cool, like this is all my guys, go with it. I don't want to waste the time. So things like that. And we connected to city water and I needed to price shop that. And I was able to get it really cheap because I used some guys and you know what I mean? I pulled guys from this area and I was able to connect to city water for a fraction of what other people were quoting me to do the whole thing. Cause I was able to, I'm not a licensed contractor, but basically GC that job with all the different trades. And that's where I saved my investors probably $15,000 just on running 325 feet of line, installing the backflow preventer, getting it hooked into the city meter, paying the tap and the meter fee. You know what I mean? Disconnecting from all that stuff I was able to do. Cause to me, it was no different than when I used to replace main lines in my flips. It was just a lot bigger, a lot more expensive, but the process was the same. And I saved our people $10,000, $15,000 versus if I just hired that plumbing contractor to do it all for me and took my first quote. And that's why managing a park yourself is so essential. So when we're talking about graduating, you have to be willing to do that. If you're not willing to deal with those tenants, if you're not willing to do that work yourself, do not get into mobile home parks. Because you and I talked about like who you buy from. We talked about the mom and pops, but again, the next one are the people that don't know and they think it's easy. And we looked at a lot of parks where people buy it 1031 into it. They want mobile home park. They don't know the first thing and it just starts to get out of hand for them. And
well, I'll tell you, with the fact that you have a blog, do you get deep and heavy into all this in your blog where people can Do you mind if anybody reaches out to you and ask questions, hit your social media up? Do you have a place where they can, I mean, I want to bombard you with a bunch of stuff. There'll be a lot of regular residential people that'll hear this. Is there any way that people can connect with you? Can they connect with you on your social media?
Yeah, go to at MHP Operator on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or X or whatever, and then the MHPoperator.com. There's links and if you sign up for my blog and every single one of my articles, I send out links to just talk to me. And, no commitment, no nothing. If you just want to set up a Zoom call and talk mobile home parks, which is how I connected with that one guy. He signed up for my blog, read some articles, and then set up a meeting with me. And then from there, we just talked a few times and I mean, he was a lot more experienced than me and he educated me, but he liked my blog. So
That's
it's a
awesome,
great
man.
way. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
I'm
great
big on
way.
giving the plus the when you give back and you made a point earlier that is so important is when you teach, you learn, right? When you
Yeah.
teach people how to do things and like in our coaching business, I noticed I could talk to 100 flippers, right? And something comes out every single day that somebody's doing in their business they need to improve on, where I have an aha moment where I might say, well, shit, I need to improve that myself. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it just comes from teaching. So I
How
appreciate you
come?
taking,
Oh,
oh, go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah.
No, you're
No,
good.
I was gonna ask you a question.
Yeah.
How come you haven't stepped into anything other than so what has stopped you from because we're talking, people are watching and we've talked about me stepping into
Yeah.
it, but I always like to ask people, it's like, how come you haven't stepped out as single family? Do you think it's just because the comfort, you're making good money, you're successful, the stopping that and going into something else? Is it something just because you don't know, or is it something you just don't want? Like, how come you haven't made that transition into a commercial type of asset, like the next level of that journey in the real estate journey?
That is our next journey, actually, or the next level. So the past 2 years has been evolving. My son came on full time, graduated college, came out of the logistics world, and came on full time with me. And we had a process on how we were training him up. Number one was get licensed, got licensed. Number two was work on being our agent for selling our flips. And now number three, now the part of it is he's working on more acquisition side, and this year he's going to learn the actual rehab construction side. So we have our business all dialed in like a product going down the assembly line. It's like a factory of houses. It's very everything's dialed in. There's a systems and process for every sort of thing, checklist, the E-Myth principles, if anybody's ever heard of
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Um, so that's been my focus is I am a very shiny object guy, and it would be really easy for me just to start jumping at different shit. And I did that one time, jumped at a big deal in a different state and lost $250,000. So I know what we're good at this very moment in time is finding deals, renovating houses, being purchased on the market, and usually sold within 8 to 9 weeks. That's kind of our model. But now that he's up and running and things are going well, I do want to evolve into the next thing for me. I was looking at apartments, a small multi-families, but now that we've had this conversation, I'm definitely open to learning more. I told you the I'm in a mobile home park right now. My office is in the front of one. I had no idea this was even part of it, to be honest with you. But the guy came that I rent from and said that he's going to be selling his mobile home park. And come to find out, this is all one thing, right? So that's kind of funny the way the connections happen because I am interested in learning more about it and I am interested in doing bigger deals. I learned also with our team, we're very uh, I don't want to say we're very small and we're very efficient. So we don't rehab anything outside of 20 miles from our home. Our constant deal flow, like we talked the other day, we like to get up to 7 to 10 rehabs at a time going at once. That's our sweet spot. And we have all of the same contractor. I've had the same contractors now for 10 to 15 years. Everybody's dialed in. So it's kind of like time freedom is there. I spend a lot of my time. If I could have my perfect day, what I enjoy doing personally, I enjoy talking to sellers and negotiating deals. That's my thing. I enjoy talking to the sellers, negotiating the deal, helping my son or Todd. He's our project manager. We do a scope of work. Takes about 20 minutes to put together a scope of work, and then I'm hands off till the closing table on the back end of it. So yeah, I would like to definitely learn more. There's not really any particular reason. Where we're at, Toledo is the number one most affordable city in the entire nation. Um, I'm not really confident in people aren't rushing to come live here, if that makes a sense. So the commercial aspect of it, though, I know a ton of people around here making a boatload of money. When COVID hit, the office multi space, I'm glad I wasn't in that because that thing has taken a bath ever since, and I'm glad I wasn't in the small commercial world. Being residential and what we do has really allowed us just to maintain an even keel through all this crazy shit that's happened the past 4 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, sounds like I'm not trying to convert you, bro, but it's
Sure,
like
you are.
your team. I mean, you have project manager, you have work scope, you have the manager, you have your son. I mean, then you have you. It's like you have the pieces that could easily take you to the next level. When
For
I was
local.
a
For local.
no, mobile home parks. I know you have this thing because you lost money about going somewhere else. And I was only looking local too for a while. Mobile home parks, honestly, being not local is not a big thing as long as you're willing to take the time to go visit the property. And then, I go every month when we buy it and stay for weeks at a time. But eventually, when you have a manager, like it's just every once a quarter. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to go as much after year one, year two. It's like the initial part of a flip, right? You're there all the time building your scopes, doing all this stuff. And then at the tail end, even your crews aren't working as much. Punch outs, there's days of downtime. Just change that out to months. You know what I mean? Months where you don't need to go to the park because things are operating smoothly. But what I'm saying is, I mean, dude, like you have all these pieces. You could easily do it. And it's I don't know why anybody with those pieces and the skill set, and if they have the desire to, wouldn't do it. Why I stopped being a realtor, I saw 50 and 60-year-old realtors opening doors and selling homes and writing contracts for a 20-year-old trying to buy their first home. And I knew I didn't want to be 50 or 60 showing homes and having to drive people around, right? And
Yeah.
when I got into flipping and wholesaling, I didn't want to be 60 years old only as good as my last deal, having to flip and deal with all of that stuff. I wanted something that I could scale. So when I was 50, 60, 70, this money was coming in, my portfolio, my net worth, it was all there. You will never, like the net worth you can build in single family will never match that, what you could build with a scalable asset like mobile home parks or buying business or any of these things that you
Right.
could pick. And it's like, maybe that park that you're in. It's just like my Little Rock park that I met through a guy, through a friend that I did a free thing with, and I wasn't expecting, and it just was like on my doorstep.
Right. I'm
Maybe
hoping.
that's your, maybe that's your, what do you call it? The aha moment where you do it, and once you do it, like it does become. How many lots is it?
I'd have to check. I think it's right around 30. I think it's right
That's a
around
sweet
30.
spot. 29% of the 44,000 homes are between 30 and like 100, right? 30 and 99. That is the sweet spot that you want to be in as you're starting. It's anything less than 30 is really tough, unless of course it's like right next to your house. But 30 to 100 is like those sweet spots. 30 is ideal. It's just enough that if something goes wrong, you still have cash flow from the other units. One of the biggest mistakes, somebody buys a 10 unit park and two of them go vacant, you have repairs, your cash flow can't
Right.
work for you. I mean, dude, I would love to see you try it and do one and then reconnect with you and then have you tell me that you don't like it. I would imagine you would see it because it has all of the same things that you're doing now, just all in one package. And you could focus solely all of your skill sets, the flipping, the managing of rentals, all of that can be put instead of two different types of businesses. It is literally just in one business that becomes infinitely scalable. You are great at capital raising. You raise capital for your flips. You help other people capital raise. That is a skill set that I wish I had when I was in mobile home parks because I think I would have scaled a lot faster. I bet you if you did it, you would scale faster than me and you would probably surpass me in unit count in a shorter time with your skill sets and the team that you have. I didn't have that team when I started. You do. I would say you could be pretty dangerous in something like this if it is something that you desire.
Yeah, well, let's
Um,
see how it shakes out. When he gets back, we're going to be having those conversations as the year rolls on. He wants to sell at the beginning of 2026.
you think you
So,
could get some seller finance?
I'm sure that if it would probably be an option, I'd have to explain it very clear and go through that. We have a process for seller finance, obviously, but I would have to take him down that journey. I'm sure it would probably be,
Sometimes they don't have a choice though in mobile home park
that's what, yeah,
because if they don't have books, if they don't have deposits, if they don't have a clean set of records, no bank's giving a loan on it. So if he's like a mom and pop who just collects cash, bro, that is the only way he'll sell it is to a cash buyer or to a seller finance because no bank will give a loan on an asset like that. Because he has no proof of the income, and banks are just going to be like, I don't know, this guy actually is depositing 20 grand a
right.
month. He has no bank deposits because the guy keeps it all and goes to Las Vegas or something, Atlantic
Yeah.
City. you know, dude, I think that'd be pretty cool for you.
I'm interested. I'm going to be checking out your blog for sure. And again, before we get off this podcast, one more time, your social media and your blog.
At MHP Operator, social media, and you subscribe to my blog at the mhpoperator.com.
You got it, brother. I appreciate all the nuggets, man. The insight, the evolution of I call it regular residential real estate, all the way up to mobile home parks, and the fact that you've got your time freedom back and you're not chasing around uh, wholesalers, what else? Dispositions, buyers, all that shit that goes along with the residential world. Congratulations on your growth,
Thanks,
man. I
man.
look forward to seeing what else is next.
Appreciate you,
So
brother.
until next time, follow us at the Level Up REI podcast with Rick. Follow Brandon and follow him on his social media. Download his blog right now, and you're going to learn that there's levels to the real estate investing world. And until next time, follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll talk to you soon.